The sound of clanking metal echoed through the dim corridors of the starship Invictus, its walls humming with the power of the engines in full thrust. On the bridge, Captain Lyra Voss stood before the holographic display of the battlefield, her eyes narrowed with intensity. Her fingers hovered over the command panel, giving the final orders for the human fleet's first strike against the alien forces. She had trained for this moment her whole life, and yet the weight of responsibility never seemed to lessen. "Prepare for immediate engagement," Captain Voss commanded, her voice unwavering. Around her, the crew responded with synchronized precision, a reflection of the unity forged in years of war preparations. The enemy fleet, a conglomerate of insectoid ships, was visible on the starboard view screen, a dark mass of shifting shapes that seemed to pulse and growl through the fabric of space. "All hands brace for impact. We fight for humanity's survival." The crew moved swiftly, their bodies and minds tuned to the rhythm of battle as the stars outside began to warp with the impending conflict. The bridge fell silent as Captain Voss issued the final order, her voice calm yet powerful. "Initiate combat protocols. All ships, engage." The first wave of human ships, sleek and angular, broke away from the formation, their engines flaring with the power of their acceleration. As they propelled forward, the alien fleet did not hesitate. Dark tendrils of energy shot from their ships, and the vacuum of space echoed with the soundless strike of the first volley. Explosions erupted in space, briefly lighting up the darkness. Captain Voss watched with grim resolve as the battle began. The Invictus was positioned strategically at the center of the fleet, and its weapons powered up, ready to retaliate. "Target their command ship," Voss ordered. "We break their leadership. We break their will." The first wave of ships collided with the alien fleet in a furious storm of explosions and laser fire. The Invictus held its position, its weapons blazing as it unleashed a barrage of plasma shots towards the enemy. The alien ships dodged with surprising agility, their exoskeletal designs shimmering as they twisted through space. One of the human ships was hit, its hull cracking and splitting apart, but the fleet pressed on. "We hold the line," Captain Voss murmured, her gaze fixed on the chaotic battlefield. The stakes were high, and there was no turning back now. The first real taste of war had arrived. The Invictus rocked violently as it took a hit from an enemy strike. Captain Voss gripped the armrests of her chair, her jaw clenched. The crew scrambled, quickly assessing damage reports and making adjustments to the ship systems. "Status report," Voss barked, her voice unwavering. "Shields holding. Hull integrity at 89%, reported one of the officers. "Prepare for another strike." The ship's lights flickered, and the steady hum of the engines began to fluctuate. Outside, the battle raged on, but within the heart of the Invictus, it was a struggle for control. The Invictus regained its stability, and Captain Voss took a deep breath, refocusing her mind. "Weapons systems online," she said, a grim smile crossing her face. "Let's show them the might of humanity." The ship's plasma cannons fired once more, and the enemy fleet staggered under the force of the retaliation. The tide of the battle had turned. But as the alien fleet began to retreat, one enormous ship, darker and more menacing than the rest, emerged from the shadows. The real challenge had just begun. The Invictus surged forward as the alien flagship loomed ever larger in the view. Its dark, jagged silhouette seemed to swallow the light, casting a terrifying shadow over the battle. Captain Voss narrowed her eyes as the ship's powerful shields deflected another round of enemy fire. The human fleet was holding its ground, but this new massive vessel was a different beast entirely. "We need to focus on that ship. It's their command center. Take it down, and the rest will crumble," Voss commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. The crew scrambled to comply, activating specialized weapons and targeting systems. A series of explosive blasts lit up the darkness of space as the Invictus and the fleet's forces opened fire. But the flagship was no easy target. It absorbed the damage with unnatural resilience, its shields crackling with energy. The fight was about to escalate. The Invictus rocked again as another blast hit its starboard side, knocking several crew members off their feet. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing the bridge in red. "Report!" Captain Voss shouted, gripping her console to steady herself. "Shields are at 40%. Hull integrity is holding for now," came the response from one of the officers. "We need to focus fire on their flagship. We can't afford another hit like that." The enemy flagship loomed closer, its weapons flashing in unpredictable bursts. Despite the damage, Captain Voss remained composed, her mind calculating their next move. "Prepare the torpedoes," she ordered. "We need to punch through their defenses. Now!" The tension on the bridge was palpable as the crew responded, working with urgency. The Invictus was in the heart of the storm, but it would not back down. The torpedoes launched from the Invictus, their warheads glowing brightly as they hurtled through space toward the alien flagship. Time seemed to stretch as the projectiles neared their target. But the flagship's shields flared, absorbing the initial salvo. The human fleet continued its assault, but the alien ship's resilience was unmatched. Captain Voss watched as the battle escalated, her heart pounding in her chest. "There must be a weakness," she muttered, scanning the enemy ship's defenses. Her mind raced, calculating every angle, every possible flaw. "Focus on their engines. If we disable them, they'll be vulnerable," Voss ordered. The crew sprang into action, the focus of the entire fleet shifting to the dark heart of the alien ship. The tide of the battle was changing, but it was unclear if the humans could survive long enough to strike the fatal blow. The Invictus suddenly jerked violently, and alarms blared through the ship. "What was that?" Captain Voss demanded. A crew member looked up in horror. "The flagship. It's firing its main weapon. Direct hit to the forward shields." The bridge shook again, and the entire ship groaned under the strain. "Damage report," Voss shouted. "Shields are down to 20%, hull integrity compromised," came the strained reply. The alien flagship had retaliated with devastating force, its main weapon a pulse of dark energy that seemed to bend the very fabric of space. Outside, the human fleet was struggling to keep their formation intact, but the Invictus was taking the brunt of the assault. Voss gritted her teeth, refusing to show any sign of fear. "We're not done yet," she said. "Prepare the last-ditch countermeasure. We'll show them what we're made of." The Invictus fired its final weapon, a powerful energy pulse that streaked toward the alien flagship. For a moment, it seemed like the universe held its breath. The pulse collided with the flagship's shields, sending ripples of energy throughout its surface. The shields flickered, then failed. The flagship shuddered as the blast tore into its hull. "Direct hit. The flagship's shields are down," one of the officers reported. The crew cheered, but Voss remained focused. "Now is our chance. All ships concentrate fire on the flagship," she commanded. The Invictus and its fleet advanced, unleashing a wave of destructive firepower. With the alien flagship reduced to rubble, the human fleet breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the battle was far from over. Captain Voss stood at the helm, scanning the remaining alien ships that continued to orbit around the now-destroyed flagship's wreckage. "They're calling reinforcements," one of the officers reported, his voice tinged with urgency. "More ships are emerging from hyperspace, hundreds of them." Captain Voss clenched her fists. The alien threat was not only persistent, it was growing stronger by the minute. "All ships prepare for a counteroffensive," Voss ordered, her voice steely. "We will not allow them to regroup." The crew responded with fierce resolve, and the Invictus accelerated forward, cutting through the chaos as the human fleet braced for the next wave. This battle had only just begun. The human fleet formed a defensive perimeter, but the alien reinforcements were overwhelming. A massive swarm of ships, each one darker and more dangerous than the last, charged toward them. "They're not holding back," Voss said under her breath, watching as the enemy fleet advanced. "Target their smaller ships first," she commanded, her tone resolute. The Invictus fired its plasma cannons in rapid succession, tearing through the first wave of alien vessels. But the alien ships, now in greater numbers, fought with greater ferocity. Plasma fire from both sides lit up the void, creating an eerie glow. As the battle intensified, Captain Voss kept her focus sharp. "Stay together. We've faced worse," she muttered to herself, even as the Invictus took another hit. The enemy had brought their full force to bear, and the humans had to rise to the challenge. The Invictus took a direct hit, its shields flickering and the ship trembling under the force. "Shields down to 15%, an officer called out, his voice strained. The crew worked quickly to reroute power, but the alien ships were relentless. One of the smaller human ships was hit, spiraling out of control as it exploded in a brilliant fireball. The loss stung, but Captain Voss steeled herself. "Do not let their sacrifice be in vain," she said, her voice clear and commanding. "Focus fire on their flagship." The alien command ship, massive and covered in glowing red markings, loomed ahead, and despite the overwhelming odds, the human fleet pressed on, refusing to surrender. Voss knew that the destruction of the enemy's leadership would be their only chance of survival. The Invictus unleashed a barrage of torpedoes toward the alien flagship, their trails of light cutting through the blackness of space. Captain Voss held her breath as they neared their target. The alien flagship, its hull shimmering with energy, seemed to absorb the oncoming attack. But then, with a violent shudder, the flagship's shields collapsed, and the torpedoes struck the vulnerable hull. The ship groaned and twisted as explosions tore through its structure. "Direct hit. The flagship's shields are down," one of the officers reported. The crew cheered, but Voss remained focused. "Now is our chance. All ships concentrate fire on the flagship," she commanded. The Invictus and its fleet advanced, unleashing a wave of destructive firepower. With the alien flagship finally succumbing to the relentless assault, the remaining alien ships began to falter. The Invictus surged forward, its weapons systems fully powered, cutting through the wreckage of the alien fleet. "We've broken their line," Captain Voss said, her voice cold with determination. But just as victory seemed within their grasp, a new threat emerged. From the wreckage of the flagship, a massive alien superweapon, still partially intact, powered up. Its core pulsed with dark energy, and it was aimed directly at the human fleet. "Brace for impact," Voss shouted as the weapon discharged, sending a wave of destructive energy racing toward them. The Invictus was forced to veer sharply to avoid the blast. The tide of the battle had turned again, but the humans would fight on. "This is it," Captain Voss said quietly. "We end this now." The energy from the alien superweapon narrowly missed the Invictus, but the impact left a massive shockwave that rippled through the battlefield, throwing several human ships off course. "All ships, maintain formation," Captain Voss barked, her voice filled with urgency. The Invictus rocked once more as debris from the shattered alien flagship continued to drift across space. "That weapon's power is unlike anything we've seen," one officer muttered, eyes glued to the readings on his screen. "We can't take many more hits like that." Captain Voss clenched her jaw and gave a curt nod. "We don't need to take another hit, we need to take them down now." The crew worked quickly, recalibrating weapons and adjusting strategies. The alien superweapon was vulnerable now, but they had to act fast. "Focus fire on their core," she ordered, her eyes never leaving the view screen. The battle was nearing its critical moment. The Invictus surged forward with a renewed sense of purpose, its engines roaring as it closed in on the alien superweapon. "Prepare for maximum firepower," Captain Voss said, her eyes locked on the target. The human fleet followed suit, their weapons charging as they fired in unison. The alien superweapon's core, now fully exposed, glowed with dark energy, as if it were alive. Plasma shots hit the superweapon's surface, causing sparks and cracks to form. Yet, the alien weapon fought back, sending pulses of energy in retaliation. One of the human ships, a smaller frigate, took a direct hit and disintegrated in an explosion of light. "No!" Voss shouted, her hand tightening around the armrest of her chair. "We will not let them die in vain." She gave the order to focus all remaining fire on the core. The fate of the human fleet was now in their hands. The final assault on the alien superweapon was intense. Captain Voss watched as the Invictus fired its last salvo, a concentrated beam of energy that hit the core dead center. The superweapon's energy flared in response, and for a moment, it seemed as though it might retaliate. Then, with a deafening explosion, the core shattered, sending shockwaves through the surrounding fleet. The remaining alien ships faltered as their superweapon, their ultimate power, was destroyed. But the battle wasn't over. Smaller alien ships swarmed around the wreckage of the superweapon, trying to protect their dwindling forces. "Don't let them regroup," Voss ordered, her tone unwavering. The human fleet had won a significant victory, but the alien threat still loomed large. "Prepare for a final assault," she commanded, rallying her crew for what could be their last push. With the alien superweapon destroyed, the remaining alien forces began to retreat, but not without a final desperate attempt to strike at the human fleet. Smaller, faster ships darted in, trying to breach the human defenses. "Brace for impact," Captain Voss shouted as the Invictus swerved to avoid one of the alien ships that had come too close. The ship's shields flared again as it absorbed another hit. "Status," Voss demanded. "Shields at 12%, hull integrity at 50%, the officer reported, sweat beading on his forehead. "We can't take much more." Captain Voss scanned the space around them, watching as the retreating alien ships tried to regroup. "No more retreating. We end this now," she shouted. "All ships follow my lead. We push them out of our space." With a fierce command, the Invictus led the charge, breaking through the remaining alien forces. The final clash between the human fleet and the alien remnants was brutal. The Invictus cut through the remaining alien ships with precision, its plasma cannons lighting up the void as it tore through the enemy forces. "This is it," Captain Voss said, watching as the last of the alien ships were obliterated. "We've won, but at what cost?" The human fleet had succeeded in defending humanity, but the toll of the battle was clear. Wreckage floated around the Invictus, and many of their ships had been lost. As the last alien ship disintegrated, Captain Voss allowed herself a moment to breathe. "We live to fight another day," she said quietly. But deep down she knew that the war was far from over. For now, though, they had secured a hard-earned victory. With the last of the alien ships disintegrating into space debris, the human fleet took a moment to regroup. The battle had been costly, and many ships were severely damaged. Captain Voss stood in the center of the Invictus bridge, watching the damage reports scroll across the screens. "We've lost many good ships," she said quietly, her voice heavy with the weight of leadership. Her crew remained focused, though the loss was palpable. One officer spoke up. "The remaining alien forces are retreating into deep space. They're trying to reorganize." Voss nodded grimly. "We've dealt them a blow, but this war is far from over. We need to track their movements and prepare for the next assault." The war was evolving, and the human fleet would need to adapt quickly to maintain its advantage. "Prepare for reconnaissance," she ordered. "We're going after them." The Invictus set off in pursuit of the retreating alien fleet, scanning deep space for any signs of their movements. The crew worked tirelessly, analyzing every data point, every signature that could provide insight into the enemy's next move. "We're close," one officer reported. "I've detected a faint energy signature ahead. It could be them." Captain Voss leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Prepare to engage," she ordered, her voice low but filled with determination. "We'll take the fight to them." The Invictus accelerated, cutting through space with a precision and speed that only a vessel of its caliber could achieve. Voss knew that the next phase of the war would be even more challenging, but she was ready. "This time we end it," she muttered under her breath, her resolve steeled for the battle to come. As the Invictus closed in on the alien fleet's energy signature, the atmosphere on the bridge grew tense. "I'm reading multiple ships ahead," the officer at the sensor station reported. "It's them. They've regrouped." Captain Voss stood tall, her eyes scanning the data as the human fleet assembled behind her. "Prepare to engage. Target their vulnerable points first. We've already shown we can break their defenses. This time, we don't stop. The crew moved into action, their motions sharp and precise. The Invictus weapons powered up, and the tension on the bridge reached its peak. The battle was inevitable. The alien fleet, though regrouped, was no match for the combined might of the human forces. Yet, Voss knew better than to underestimate them. The war was about to reach its most dangerous stage. The Invictus fired its first volley, a concentrated burst of plasma aimed at the lead alien ship. The blast tore through the darkness, striking the alien vessel with a bright explosion that echoed across space. The alien fleet retaliated immediately, firing volleys of their own. The Invictus rocked under the force of the strikes, but its shields held. "Status report," Voss demanded. "Shields holding at 40%, hull integrity at 60%, came the response. "We're holding our ground, but we can't keep this up forever." Captain Voss's eyes narrowed. "Then we end this now," she said, her voice cold. The Invictus fired again, its weapons cutting through the alien forces. As the battle raged on, Voss's mind remained clear, calculating every move as if she could already see the victory at the end of the fight. The Invictus pressed on, relentless in its pursuit. The alien fleet, though fierce, began to crumble under the pressure. One by one, their ships were disabled, their shields failing, their hulls cracking under the might of the human fleet. Captain Voss's voice rang out across the bridge. "We've got them on the run. Keep up the pressure. We end this now." The Invictus fired again, its torpedoes hitting their mark. One of the largest alien ships exploded in a violent fireball. The remaining ships started to scatter, their retreating forces leaving the battlefield. "They're running," Voss said, her voice cold. "Don't let them escape." The fleet pushed forward, annihilating the remaining enemy ships until the battlefield was littered with wreckage. The war was not over, but a significant victory had been won. Captain Voss stood at the helm, eyes scanning the wreckage. This was only the beginning. The human fleet, victorious but worn from the brutal battles, slowed to a halt in the dark expanse of space. Captain Voss stood in the center of the Invictus bridge, her hands clasped behind her back as she stared at the stars. The battle was over, for now. The remaining alien forces had retreated, but there was a sense of unease in the air. "What now?" an officer asked, his voice tinged with exhaustion. Voss turned to face him, her eyes sharp despite the fatigue. "Now we regroup," she said firmly. "We can't afford to rest for long. They'll come back, and when they do, we'll be ready." The crew nodded in agreement, their faces hardened with the realization that the war was far from over. The victory they had achieved was only a temporary reprieve, a fleeting moment before the next wave of conflict. The Invictus crew worked tirelessly, repairing the damage from the previous battles. In the background, Voss paced the bridge, reviewing new intel that had been gathered during the conflict. "We've received reports of a large fleet massing at the edge of the system," one of the officers reported. "They're gathering at a nearby planet." Voss paused, considering the data. "It's them. They've regrouped faster than we expected," she said, her voice hard. "Prepare for another engagement. Set course for the planet." The Invictus powered up its engines once more, and the human fleet followed suit. Captain Voss's focus was unshakable. The human fleet had been tested, but they had shown they could overcome any challenge. "This is it. We end this fight here." As the Invictus neared the planet, the enemy fleet came into full view, its massive numbers overwhelming. The fleet's ships were larger than anything the humans had faced before, and their design seemed to shimmer with a strange alien energy. "This is no ordinary force," Captain Voss said, scanning the enemy fleet's formations. "We'll need to disrupt their defenses before we can even think about getting to the core." The crew worked quickly, recalibrating their weapons and preparing for a devastating assault. "Take out their energy shield generators," Voss ordered. "Then we focus on the command ship. We're not giving them any time to retaliate." The tension on the bridge was palpable as the fleet moved into position. The final assault was imminent, and Captain Voss's mind was sharp, calculating every possible move. "This ends today." The battle began with a barrage of plasma fire from both sides, as the human fleet closed in on the alien forces. The Invictus fired first, its plasma cannons lighting up the dark expanse of space. "Target their command ships," Voss shouted, her voice commanding. The alien ships retaliated quickly, their weapons firing streams of dark energy that streaked toward the human fleet. "Brace for impact." The Invictus shook under the force of several hits, its shields flaring bright orange as they absorbed the energy. "Shields at 25%, hull integrity at 40%, came the frantic report from the engineering officer. Captain Voss gritted her teeth. "We hold the line, we push through." The battle was chaotic, with ships dancing in and out of combat, flashing explosions and energy bursts filling the void of space. With the alien command ships now targeted and under fire, the Invictus and the human fleet pressed the attack. The alien ships began to falter, their command structure weakened, but they fought back with brutal tenacity. "Keep up the pressure," Voss ordered. "We've broken their line, but they still have the numbers." The Invictus fired again, its torpedoes hitting their mark. One of the largest alien ships exploded in a violent fireball. The remaining ships started to scatter, their retreating forces leaving the battlefield. "They're running," Voss said, her voice cold. "Don't let them escape." The fleet pushed forward, annihilating the remaining alien ships until the battlefield was littered with wreckage. The war was not over, but a significant victory had been won. Captain Voss stood at the helm, eyes scanning the wreckage. This was only the beginning. The silence of space seemed deafening after the battle had ended. The alien fleet had been decimated, and the human forces were left with the wreckage of war. Captain Voss stood on the bridge of the Invictus, looking out into the vastness of space, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "We've done it," an officer murmured, as if speaking the thought on everyone's mind. The battle had been long and grueling, but the human fleet had triumphed. Still, Voss's mind was not at ease. "This victory means nothing if we don't use it to prepare for what comes next," she said, her voice firm. "The war is far from over, and the aliens will return. But we've proven that they are not invincible." Her eyes narrowed as she turned toward the crew. "Oh, we keep moving forward. We find them before they regroup." With that, she gave the order to continue the pursuit. The war was not over yet. As the Invictus pursued the remnants of the alien fleet, Voss sat in her command chair, reviewing the intelligence gathered during the conflict. "We've received reports of a large fleet massing at the edge of the system," one of the officers reported. "They're gathering at a nearby planet." Voss narrowed her eyes. "It's them. They've regrouped faster than we expected," she said, her voice hard. "Prepare for another engagement. Set course for the planet." The Invictus powered up its engines once more, and the human fleet followed suit. The Invictus led the charge with precise determination. "This is it. We end this fight here," she said, her gaze never leaving the stars ahead. The final showdown was imminent, and the stakes had never been higher. As the Invictus neared the planet, the alien fleet came into full view, its massive numbers overwhelming. The fleet's ships were larger than anything the humans had faced before, and their design seemed to shimmer with a strange alien energy. "This is no ordinary force," Captain Voss said, studying the alien fleet's formations. "We'll need a strike force." She turned to the officer in charge of communications. "Send a message to the fleet. We need to coordinate our attack. We take out their command ships first. We don't give them time to regroup." The officer nodded and began transmitting the orders. Outside, the battle loomed, a dark and dangerous confrontation that could determine the fate of the entire war. The crew of the Invictus prepared for what could be their most critical fight yet. The assault on the alien stronghold began with a series of pinpoint strikes from the Invictus and the rest of the human fleet. Plasma shots tore through the enemy defenses, and the alien ships retaliated with aggressive fire. "Shields holding at 50%, came the report. "We've got them on the ropes," Voss said, her eyes locked on the view screen. The alien command ship remained at the heart of the fortress, heavily shielded. All ships, Focus fire on the command ship. We take that down, and the rest will fall. The Invictus weapons fired in rapid succession, tearing through the alien defenses. The human fleet moved as one, a seamless and coordinated attack that pushed back the alien forces. "We're breaking through," Voss said with quiet satisfaction, but her focus never wavered. "We finish this now." With the alien command ship finally succumbing to the relentless assault, the remaining alien ships began to falter. The Invictus and the human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. The remaining alien ships scattered, retreating into deep space, or exploding under the barrage. "Victory," Captain Voss whispered, her voice hoarse. The battlefield fell eerily quiet, with only the wreckage of the alien fleet floating in the void. The war was over. For now, humanity had won. "All ships stand down," Voss ordered, her voice steady. "We've earned this moment of peace." But deep within, she knew that the galaxy was vast, and their fight was far from finished. The future of humanity had been secured, for the time being. The crew of the Invictus had proven that against all odds, they could rise to any challenge.